and welcome to Gladys Cake Kitchen, where I, Gladys Anya, talks about all things cake. Over here you will find yourself some tips, tricks, foolproof techniques and well-tested recipes to help you along your baking journey. There's also the occasional chatty and haul videos and informative videos about your caking ingredients, tools and equipment. So if you're watching and you find value in my videos, please consider subscribing. And if you're already a subscriber, thanks for joining me. In today's video, I am excited to bring you a very simple vanilla cake recipe made from Stork. Stork is a brand of UK margarine that most bakers use. Now, I have been in a few cake forums where my colleagues have slightly complained about a slight change in the composition of Stork that has affected the quality of their bakes. So I took some time out to test a simple recipe and to bring you the result. Hopefully you will like it. So without having to waste your time, join me in this video whilst we bake a simple recipe using the margarine brand Stork. Starting with the ingredients, you will need 350 grams of Stork margarine, 425 grams of sugar. I normally use caster sugar, but today I've run out of caster sugar, so granulated sugar will do the job just fine. 425 grams of self-raising flour, 275 grams of eggs, broken and stored and brought to room temperature. Also, you'll need 110 grams of warm milk or sour cream. I tend to mix a bit of sour cream with milk, so half and half will do, just to give you a runny consistency. Warm, pop it in the microwave for about 10 seconds. It could run on a bit of a hot side, but by the time you come to using it, it would have gone to a warm temperature enough to mix with your butter. Also, you will need some vanilla here, and otherwise there is a greased and lined tins here, and of course my spatula to use. So without further ado, let's get straight into this baking process. I'm going to put my margarine into the mixer first, then followed by the sugar. Next will be a tablespoonful or two of the vanilla. I'm going to leave this to cream for about 5 to 8 minutes. Well, as you can see, I had already left the mixer on, so I'm going to go and cream this for about 5 to 8 minutes. And this is on medium speed. Whilst that is mixing, after 5 minutes of creaming the margarine and sugar together, this is the consistency you're looking for. It is on a spatula. It will fall off easily with a slight shake, and the color goes from the yellow obviously to a near pale or white color here. So I'm just gonna pop it back on the mixer and let it run a little bit more. And whilst that is happening, I am just going to take a whisk. This flour, self-raising flour, has been sifted and a pinch of salt added. But I'm just going to whisk it to add a bit of air in there. And having done that, I'm going to beat my eggs slightly so it's easily mixed when I introduce that into the margarine and sugar mixture here. Now, after almost 6 minutes of whisking, this is exactly the consistency we are looking for and the color of margarine we're looking for here. This will give you a very creamy presentation, and on a spatula it falls off easily with a slight shake. Be careful not to overbeat your margarine, because once you overbeat and the structure is broken, it gives you a different kind of problem when you come to baking the cake. So be mindful of that. The beat time, depending on what you're using, can last anything between 4 minutes to 7 minutes. But sometimes I do go as far as 8, depending on what I'm doing and what the recipe calls for. So I'm going to go and add the egg mixture into my margarine and sugar. Butter here. Now I'm pouring this slowly into the mixture. Slow, that's the job. Now whilst this is beaten, occasionally you can raise it and stir your mixture in, or mix it so that everything is incorporated nicely. Here we are. The other thing that goes into the mixer now is the self-raising flour. Like I said earlier, the self-raising flour has a pinch of salt mixed into it to give the cake some taste. But of course you can eliminate that if you don't care for the salt. So I'm going to pour this in just a little at a time, and I'm going to alternate that with the 110 grams of milk we have over here. Earlier I did say the milk is a 50-50, which is 55 grams of sour cream mixed in with some full fat milk. Whilst you're trying to mix the flour and milk into the mixture here, be careful to keep your mixer on the low, because otherwise you are likely to overmix, or the mixer is likely to go off and you'll have a splatter of flour everywhere, and we certainly do not want that. Now, to prevent the likelihood of overbeating my batter here, I'm just going to use a spatula to mix it in, turn it all in together before adding the final batch of self-raising flour. By so doing, I reduce the rate at which I have to mix this so much, thereby reducing the risk of overmixing my batter here. Now we've mixed in all our ingredients here, so we're going to give it about 20 to 30 seconds for it to mix. But to also kind of help it along the way, I'm just going to use the spatula to kind of mix it all together, and then let the mixer do the rest of the job before I transfer it into my pans here. So I've mixed my batter in here, and with the spatula just to help it along, and I'm just going to leave the mixer at a very slow speed for about 10 seconds to finish the job, and then we'll scoop that into our baking pans and pop it in a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. I'm quite used to the Celsius, so bear that in mind. The oven is already preheated, so I'm just going to transfer this mixture into my lined tins over here. Then we'll move it straight into the oven. This bakes very quickly actually. For about 35 to 40 minutes you will have yourself a nicely baked cake. For the 180 degrees, you want to bear in mind what type of oven you're using. 180 degrees tends to be the standard heat preferred for baking cakes. But if you know your oven very well and you can control the outcome of the cake you want, depending on the crust level and everything, you can either increase or reduce your temperature. I tend to bake my cakes between 160 and 170. It takes a longer bake time to finish, but ultimately it does me very well. I am just going to transfer this. You can measure your batter on a scale so that you have an even bake in your tins, but I've done this a lot, so I tend to kind of eyeball it. Plus I will trim and layer these cakes with a leveler, so I end up getting the outcome I want without all the fuss of doing the extra stuff. But if you're a beginner baker, it's probably the best thing to learn better and help yourself along the way with some basic tips that might assist you with a final bake. Having done that, sometimes it's helpful to just slam this to get air bubbles out of your batter. And one last thing, I tend to use a spatula to create a hole in the batter, because when you put it in the oven and it's beginning to rise, sometimes the middle doesn't bake very well. So by creating a hole in it, it helps it bake evenly. I think there's a proper explanation to it. Maybe in my next video, I'll tell you all about that. But we've popped out the air bubbles. And if you're wondering what tins I'm using the PME 5-inch tins. PME brand of tins are very good. They're awesome. They have been my best tins to use. And if you're looking for any budget-friendly tins that will help you along your baking journey, you're welcome. Thank me later. So I'm gonna go pop this in the oven and I'll come back later and I'll show you what the bakes are like. Hello and welcome back. After 40 minutes of baking and another 10 minutes to allow it to cool, our cake is done, and this simple vanilla cake recipe made from the margarine brand of Stork is complete. As you can see, this is what it looks like on the outside. It's fresh and the crust is not so bad. I'm gonna go ahead and take out the second one so you can see what it is like on the inside. Now, I am not sure if lining the tins made a difference or not. I just tend to line them out of habit and to avoid the possibility of anything else in case I don't line it. But what has been your experience? Do you line your tins? Do you not line your tins? And have you used the PME tins, and how have they served you? My experience with them have been great. They've served me well, and they tend to be my very recommended tins for baking. So as a beginner, that would be your go-to tin for use. They are very affordable, they are anodized, and they are great to use. So with all that said, here is our very simple vanilla cake recipe that is baked from the margarine brand Stork. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something from it. Now, if you've got some value from watching this video, please remember to subscribe and like, share my videos so that it helps us grow from here on. And if you're already a subscriber, I'm grateful for your time, and join us in our next video where I'll be showing you some more of cake.